Welcome to our void determination process in-depth question for today. It is so inspiring to see how many people have raised their hand for this particular topic. Definitely is a game changer when you can understand and know your voids and have a deeper insight into what's actually happening and why it's so important for you to know your values, but know what's actually driving you. So that is what is going to be our topic for today. So stay tuned. If you'd love the workbook that is with the class for today, just type in voids again below and we will get that workbook to you as soon as possible. So first of all, we're going to cover a really interesting topic, which is around what are voids? How does our voids influence or impact our identity? And then what's some of the questions that you can ask yourself to start to unpack your voids and your specific voids. So first of all, if you're watching the replay, just hit replay. I'd love to hear your insights and thoughts. So thank you for stopping by. So let's explore the idea of like what specific are voids. And so you're more than familiar with the Demartini value determination process. And that's this 12-step process, which you go through and you ask questions about how do you spend your time, your money, what energizes you, what is your internal thoughts about, what's your external conversations about. And it's all these questions that help you to determine what you value today. And so as we ask them what's a void, well, you can't have a value without it because you believe it's important for you right now. You can't have a value without having a void. And so a void is essentially something that you perceive maybe you lacked or you had absent or you didn't have some time in your life, and can be compounding. It can be not just one time once, but many times over in different ways, in different forms. And then the result of that is you want to go fulfill it and make it valuable in your everyday life today. So we can have voids that originate from our early years. We did this really beautiful class yesterday in our Maximum Growth Academy, which is around how we determine your voids, and people had the opportunity to. And some people went so far back into some of the dynamics that happened when they were in the womb or when they were their mum was giving birth, and realizing their void was actually created in that moment. So super interesting. So we can have our void be created from childhood, maybe adolescent years. And so, but it definitely is forming in our early part of our years. And so what we want to do is, it's kind of like, if you imagine that voids is like you as the driver. So we'll put this into an analogy. So your voids are like you as the driver. And so the driver is going to influence what routes and roads you take. It's going to influence what speed you travel in, and it's going to influence the destination that you end up going to. So that's essentially what a void is. And the value is you actually getting into the car, and the car itself is the value of how it shows up and how it's demonstrating today. But the drive and the desire comes from the void. And so essentially, as we then change our voids and the driver changes and the destination changes and what's inspiring changes, then of course the vehicle in itself is also going to change. It's going to change form. It's going to change, because if you have a very high value, say, on learning, and you try and fill your cup up with all the things, learning and growing in that particular area, and then you get to the point where you're like, okay, I feel like I know enough now. Well, then the vehicle's going to change, because instead of being a student, maybe then you become a business owner or a coach. And so then you share that out with the world. So you go from being a learner or being educated and studying to then going into a different vehicle that then takes you to a different destination. And so we can have all different types of voids. They come in all different shapes and sizes. You can kind of see, you can have health voids, financial voids, relationship voids. Some people have material voids. There can be spiritual voids, intellectual voids. So they come in all different shapes and sizes. But essentially there is like a void cycle that we go through. And I'm just going to share my screen with you so that we can go through this. This is in your workbook. And so I just want to paint this picture for you around this void cycle that we have. And so I just want you to imagine if you have a void on finances, that we start to have a drive. It starts with the drive. And so you have a drive to maybe grow your knowledge and grow your income or grow your understanding of finances. So that's where it starts. And so from there, you go from drive to focus. So focus is very much around like focus time, energy, effort into growing your knowledge base in finances. From there, you start to develop your skills. So you develop and increase your knowledge on wealth and what to do, and you take more action steps. We then start to produce, because once we're going round in our avoid value cycle, we start to produce something, because all the information, all the knowledge that we're acquiring, we want to go do something with it. When we fill our cup up, we then want it to overflow into others. So we start producing. And then we either get to the point where we feel fulfilled, but that can either do one of two things. We feel like we fulfill it enough, we know enough, but then there's hatching this idea, actually, there's so much more to know. And then we follow that cycle again. And we stay on the same topic, say wealth creation, because there's still so much I don't know, and that continues the cycle. But there are times in people's lives where they feel like the void actually completes. It doesn't become a driver anymore. So instead of that dynamic around, say, finance, maybe you get to, I remember a particular client comes to mind, and they had a particular financial goal of, multi-millions. They achieved it. And then the result of that was like, oh, okay, well, I don't need to do that anymore. So stop their business. And so then they went on to a new void instead. And so their life is going to look very different there than it looked over here. And so we just want to also acknowledge it. If we have a value change, maybe it's because we've had a void which has been fulfilled and therefore no longer driving you anymore. So rather than looking at, hang on, what's my current values? It's so important for us to be able to understand what your voids are and how they impact your everyday life. So if you're loving this, finding it insightful, love to hear your comments, your thoughts in the comments below. So the next part is I wanted to talk to you about the idea around how your voids affect your identity. So there's a big piece that we talk about in Maximum Growth Academy, which is around identity. It's like the core piece that you have as a coach. But not only as a coach, you as an individual, you have to have a solid sense of who you are, because then we go out to the world with that. You're less wobbly when you go out to the world because you have a core sense of who you are. And so our effort, let's say, in our drive to fulfill our voids becomes an integral part of your sense of identity. So what I mean by that is, if we have a hierarchy of voids, like we have a hierarchy of values, both of those combined actually create your identity. Because in order to have a congruent value, you have to have a big enough void. Let me explain it in a different way. Let's say, for example, you're living some values and you perceive that you need to live a value of, let's say, wealth creation, but you don't have a void big enough to drive you in wealth creation. And so you try and you try to make that your identity. You do a lot of work around it, but you can't seem to change it because you don't have a big enough void that drives you in the everyday life. And so then you can struggle with this identity piece around, well, who am I? Because it doesn't really feel congruent for you. And so then if you go back and have a look, okay, what is driving you? Some of the things that came out last night was so beautiful. One of them was expression or self-expression. And so one individual who I'm thinking of, and she has this, large community she helps individuals with on a particular topic. And so she's realizing, well, actually self-expression is actually part of her internal makeup and her drive inside of her. And that's why she does what she does. And then she'd be able to go and make money from that point. But if she's just after going and trying to make money and be money as the driver, it's not going to work for her because she's going to feel this like incongruency within her identity because her voids don't match her value, which doesn't align with her vision. But if she entangled it with, expression of self and other, and help other people to express themselves, then, and that feels more congruent alignment, then she can make money with that. So hopefully that makes sense. And so essentially our voids and our identity are really like intertwined together. And so we're going to feel the most authentic when we're going to feeling full our voids from behind. And so our identity is going to continually be shaped and morphed and change as our voids are filled. So if we have, say, in our say we have a void of health, and we have a value then around health. And so we focus and we do everything that we need to do around health, and we grow our health and we get well and we focus on that. And then we no longer have that void anymore, and that shifts. Well, then our identity around health can change. And so what maybe for a transient period of time was your identity, it now no longer is, because you've got a new void that's bubbled up inside. And that's what you want to understand and grapple and know, because that's going to be the new driver moving forward for you. And so essentially then when it comes to the void determination process, which I know that's the reason why you are all here today, so we have some really interesting questions that can really help you to go and dig deep. Now, we are actually in the process right now of doing the void determination process inside of Maximum Growth Academy. So if it is something that you are interested in joining and coming in, we do have a 14-day money back guarantee. I also know that you'll love our community. You'll love this particular class. So come, we'll put the link in the comment box below for you. So definitely jump in, and we're going to do the full, you can get access to the full 12 questions for you to unpack it. But I'm just going to give you a couple to start pondering and thinking of today. So first of all, it's much like the Demartini method or the Demartini value determination process. It's kind of similar. But how it's different is it's probably going to feel a lot heavier for you. In last night's class when we were doing it, they definitely got to a point where people are like, whoa, this is a lot, because you're going deep on 12 questions to really dig deep into what's really truly a void for you. And especially if you haven't done a lot of mindset work, or you haven't done a lot of past dissolving and resolving of your emotional stuff, it can feel a little bit heavy. But that is not the point of the process. The process is really for you to get curious, to kind of start to birth some ideas around what specifically is actually driving you, and almost like an analysis of your life, so that you can have a deeper understanding of what is most missing for you, or what do you perceive to be most missing. So there are different questions that we ask. And so one of them is that you might find helpful is, what did you perceive to be most missing in your life? So that's the first question that we ask. And it's like, if you reviewed your life up until now, what do you perceive to be most missing? And so that question's going to get you to think about and reflect, because something you think is missing is a void, and it's going to be a driver for you. So we're going to start there. The other is, because family dynamics is so entangled with our life as well, we can have this dynamic where other siblings or other family members, or it can even be friends, have had something that you didn't. And so that creates a void for you, because you see the outside world as experiencing something, having something, doing something that you were not able to do. And so therefore it births this void inside of you in comparison to the outside world. A beautiful example of this is, if you've heard of this guy named Dr. John Demartini, you might have heard of him before. He wore braces on his legs when he was young. And so as you can imagine, that level of constriction and not being able to move, and then being able to see a lot of his peers and his sibling to be able to run around and move, and his parents to be active, but he wasn't, or couldn't freely move, then of course he's going to have a huge value on travel and line up with his vision of speaking on every country in the world. And so you can see how there's this beautiful like fluency and congruency between his void, his value, and his vision. And that's essentially what you want for yourself as well. You want to have congruency from where you've been in terms of the void driving the value, and then fluency between your value and your vision of what you're creating in your life, so that there's congruency and fluency between the two. And so if you wanted to take a deep dive, I'm not going to go through all 12 questions now, but we do that inside of our Maximum Growth Academy. So it is something that you'd love to join in. Just click on the link below. If you're already watching this replay, you're already in it. Just go back and check in on that particular class inside of the Voids, Values, Vision course. And that is there for you to have a deep dive into what your unique voids are. So I hope that you have loved this class. It started to spark some ideas and some thoughts for yourself when it comes to your voice. It definitely takes some time to ponder and to think about like what's actually really truly driving you. So don't worry if you don't get it straight away, and it takes some time. So it's definitely worth unpacking and uncovering for you. So that is a little taster into what are voids and also the void determination process. Love to hear your thoughts, your insights, and your realizations. Drop it in the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you at the next perfect time.